see ya.
And
Happy July 4th.
And welcome to my second video celebrating 100 subscribers on this channel. And as this is a special video, I have to come up with, well, a special topic. And for this one, that topic is ranking every single Pokemon main series game. Now, if anyone is wondering, by main series, I'm talking about basically all of the classic Pokemon games. You know, your Red and Blue or Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, what have you. And Legends Arceus and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which I believe are agreed upon by everyone, I think, to be main series games or core series games or whatever you want to call them. So they will also be on this list. Also because I have to include Legends Arceus in some way. That game is fantastic. Now, there are a lot of games to go over, so I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail for all of these games. Otherwise, this video will actually end up being something like 10 hours long, which could be fun, but I don't know if anyone wants to sit here and watch me talk about Pokemon for 10 hours. I mean, if you do, let me know. We'll figure something out. But until then, what we're going to be doing in this video is going through some of the highlights or lowlights for these games and kind of explaining why I have them where I have them in the list. So it's more so comparing each game to the other Pokemon games than actually going in depth for that game and explaining all of the great features and not so great features that this game may have. Even with this rule, there's a lot to go over. So let's just get started. Although I also have realized that going through that whole intro extended the length of the video. So yeah, let's get to the actual list. Okay, so let's start this off with number 20 on this list. And that is going to be Pokemon X and Y. I don't really have anything against these games per se, but they are in an unfortunate position where they were the first games to have the experience all implemented the way it is now. They were the first games to have one of these completely meta-defining generational gimmicks, aka Mega Evolution for X and Y, and because of that, I don't think Game Freak really knew how to balance these games, because the storyline has so many easy battles, like really easy, like super easy, even for just the normal level of Pokemon that we've grown accustomed to. And by the end, you're so over leveled that the league felt like a joke. And also, the fact that a lot of the trainers that you face have no Mega Evolution on their team is really dumb, because you can start Mega Evolving your Pokemon a lot earlier than you start facing them in battle. Except for that one battle with Corina's Lucario, but that's a whole separate thing in and of itself. This means that since the difficulty isn't really there, the story has to carry all of the game. And I mean, X and Y has to have one of the least memorable stories of any Pokemon game. Other than the whole thing with Z, I remember almost none of it. And yeah, it's just kind of the most forgettable entry on this list, I'd say. It's not bad because it's still a main series Pokemon game, and that alone makes it a good game, if I'm being honest. But if I'm comparing it to the other games, yeah, it falls just a bit short, let's say. Anyway, let's move on to number 19. And these games, I have a lot of strong opinions on, and I was tempted to put them at 20, but I think realistically they are better than X and Y, so I kind of forced myself to put them at 19, even though part of me really did want to put them in last place. Those games are, however, Black and White. Now, Gen 5 fans, before you get all of your pitchforks out, I do want to make one thing perfectly clear. This is just Black and White. Black 2 and White 2 are a completely different story. Trust me, if you stick around, you will see that they are much higher on the list. But Black and White? Yeah, these just are not it, Chief, if you will. Because they're bad. I mean, they're not bad because they're Pokemon games, but they're also bad because they're Pokemon games. What do I mean by this? If I picked up Black and White as a random game that had the exact same storyline and the exact same mechanics and everything, but it wasn't Pokemon, I'd probably be like, wow, this is a pretty fun game. Not as good as my Pokemon games that I love, but pretty fun game. However, because it is a Pokemon game, there's certain expectations that are in place, at least for me, and Black and White don't really meet a lot of them. So they kind of find themselves at the very bottom of this list. And again, they were this close to being in last place, so yeah, I really do not like these games. But let's get to why. First off, the starters are just all disappointing and or bad. The Snivy line has to be one of the most bland lines of any Pokemon that I can think of, because I have zero strong feelings about any of the stages. The Oshawott line starts off so promising. Oshawott and Duat are fantastic. And then they ruin it with Samurott, who did get better with Hisuian Samurott, but still not perfect, or even great. Strictly design-wise, of course. And then there is the Emboar line, which, ugh. I mean, if you've been around the channel at all, you know how much I despise Emboar. So, yeah. I'm sorry, like, the starters are just a big miss, if we're being honest. But that alone is not enough to put them in 19th place. No, the rest of the game takes care of that for you. Or for itself, or I don't know, however you want to say it. And that is because the region feels so linear in Black and White, something which they actually fix in Black 2 and White 2, and we will get to that later, but in Black and White it just feels very linear, which I don't really like. And a lot of the characters that they introduced, I don't really care about. I mean, yeah, Anne is cool, sure, and like Elisa and Drayden are also cool gym leaders, but it's kind of it. I mean, I'm not hating on everything else. There are some other cool characters, but overall it feels like the cast of characters is not the best. And the storyline is absolute nonsense, okay? It's just nonsense. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people will like hate on me for this because they love the Black and White storyline. It makes no sense. It just doesn't. Like, Team Plasma is made up of hypocrites and or idiots who just believe that in order to free Pokemon, you have to steal them and use them yourself? What? I mean, yes, obviously, a lot of these people are just pretending that they want to free Pokemon and they're just in it to, like, get free Pokemon, basically, and more power. But that's kind of also retconned in Black 2 and White 2. Like, until Black 2 and White 2, it feels like Team Plasma is just an amalgamation of people who are too naive to see that they're being taken for fools by the rest of the organization, and then people who are just a word that starts with A and ends with hole. I'll let you fill in the blanks. So I just, I don't know. I really don't like Team Plasma in Black and White. And the plot is just like the most basic evil guy that pretends to not be evil but really just wants power. I just don't see how that's interesting. I'm sorry, like, it's not the worst storyline in Pokemon, but to me, it never really caught my attention in a positive way. And trust me, if it weren't for N, I think a lot of people would see it the way I do. maybe I'm wrong, but I really do think that N just saves it almost single-handedly. But the emphasis is on almost, because he doesn't. I mean, he's a cool character, but not cool enough to save the whole storyline. I'm sorry. But okay, enough harping on Black and White. We need to move on. But I mean, I knew this was going to be one of the longer entries on this list because, yeah, those games just, they get to me. Let me tell you, they really do. But again, let's get to number 18. And these are just victims of their time. Because at number 18 we have red, blue, and green, if you want to include that. And the reason I say they're victims of their time is because they were the first Pokemon games ever made. Like, they were still figuring out a lot of the mechanics. The games were full of glitches, which can be fun, but can also be annoying. There was almost zero balance in the game. I mean, the psychic types were just so much better than anything else. It was ridiculous. I mean, you think fairy types are strong now? You think dragon types are strong before Gen 6? Psychic types were like 3 times as strong as any other type has ever been at any point in the game. So, that was not great. And, I mean, especially for the original Japanese versions of the game, you know, red and green, but also for the American versions, red and blue, the sprites don't always look right. And I'm sure a lot of you know what I mean, but I'll put some of them up on screen right now. Yeah, I mean, I know that they had some technical limitations, so I don't blame them, but it is still something that is noticeably worse than every other Pokemon game, so I mean, it doesn't play in their favor. Again, I want to make it perfectly clear that I actually don't dislike these games at all. I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't dislike any Pokemon game, at least out of the main series ones. But the reason that they're towards the bottom is just, again, they were the first ones. So a lot of the stuff that we know and love either wasn't there or was poorly implemented. And because of that, they have to be towards the bottom. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love Gen 1, but objectively, if we're being honest, overall, it probably is the worst generation. Like, just from a purely technical standpoint. It just is. Even just from a gameplay standpoint, or just from every standpoint, really. I mean, other than the designs of Pokemon, and even then, it's not the best generation in that regard, at least not in my opinion. Yeah, Gen 1 is probably at the bottom for a lot of the other parameters for Pokemon games. If anything, you could make an argument that all of the Gen 1 games should be last on this list, but I do think that because of their legacy, you know, the whole starting the most successful franchise ever, they deserve to get bumped up a couple spots. But if you want to put them last for the reasons that I listed before, that's completely fine. Next, we have number 17, and we are back in Kanto, but this time it's with the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee games. I'm gonna be honest, I just never really got into the whole Let's Go mechanics. I mean, it's cool that they try to implement the Pokemon Go mechanics on the Switch. I just don't think it panned out, realistically. I mean, I didn't really like the way you had to catch Pokemon in this game. The fact that a lot of the main mechanics that we've just grown accustomed to are gone to simplify the games beyond belief, honestly, was something I never enjoyed. And also, we're back in Kanto again for some reason, and I just don't think it was necessary to have these games take place in Kanto of all places. They could have had them take place anywhere, and I would have preferred them just that little bit more. They might have still been 17th on this list, but at least it would have been something different than the region that we've gotten the most experience with. Anyway, that's it. This is a pretty short entry, and I think it's just self-explanatory because either you really like the changes that they had for these games, or you didn't, and in my case, I didn't. Although I will give them this one thing, Ride Pokemon / Pokemon Following You is at its absolute best in these games, by far, and it's not even close with anything else. Oh, and also Overworld Shinies, big fan. Moving right along, and we have number 16, and you're not gonna believe me, but we are back in Kanto yet again with Pokemon Yellow. I swear, I did not do this on purpose. It's just the way the list panned out. And yeah, it's Kanto back to back to back. And honestly, I was tempted to put yellow right after red, blue, and green. But the reason I didn't is because I believe that being able to play with all of the starters, plus some of the sprites being improved, plus just something about the game feeling more polished in general, gives it a big enough boost to have it leapfrog Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and go into the number 16 spot. However, they're all very close. Like, all these games are very close to each other, so it's not by a big margin that they make it to number 16. Still, they are here, and I'm not going to change my mind on this because I think basically every problem that applies to red, blue, and green applies to yellow, but they have come up with a couple solutions that have made the games better enough to push them just that little bit further up the list. And now, in number 15, and honestly, I think this is the last of the Pokemon games that I have like big problems with. And this one is actually an entry that I've talked about in a video before, because at number 15, we have Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Now, these games are in a similar spot as Black and White, where the other version of the Gen 7 games are much higher on the list. But Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are just the epitome of Pokemon fumbling a great concept. Because, as I said in my video, talking about all of the major problems with Pokemon being in this one game, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, these games have the long, unskippable cutscenes with no voice acting. These games have the very repetitive cast of characters where it's basically the same character just over and over again, because a lot of the characters that felt unique from the other Pokemon games in Sun and Moon have now been neutered to be just the same cookie cutter character as everything else. Like, Lucamine is evil, but not really, and like Lily goes through not even half as much character development, and even Gladium feels like he suffers from this change. Somehow, How is improved, and that's cool, but he was always the weakest character out of the main cast, so I still don't care about him too much. And these games also just have the uninventive sequel syndrome, as I called it, the worst of any Pokemon game out there. Because the third version of the game, a lot of the time, doesn't change a whole lot from the first one, but they have a much better post-game, which Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon kind of do, but not really, and definitely not better enough. They also have maybe a more polished storyline, or the same storyline but with a different twist on it, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon have that but in reverse, where it's the same storyline but made worse, and they feel like a worse version to go through Alola. So yeah, these games, if you want to know my full analysis for these, it's up on my channel, but just know that I think they easily deserve to be towards the bottom of this list, because man, it is insane how much they screwed up the Gen 7 games when they already had great base games to go off of. Next, we have the first of the games that I would say I have no real qualms with, but for some reason or another are still not towards the top of the list. And those games are, in number 14, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I can already hear the Sinnoh stands coming for my throat, but before you do, remember, I'm not saying these games are even some of the worst Pokemon games, for one. For two, I still love them because they're Pokemon games. And for three, this is just Diamond and Pearl specifically. Nothing about Platinum has been said so far. Just Diamond and Pearl. And if we take these games by themselves, objectively, they have some problems. For one, the regional Pokedex is not very good. The fact that you only have 2 fire types, or two fire type lines in the whole region is baffling. For two, this makes it so that a lot of the NPCs that you go up against for major Pokemon battles, like the gym leaders or the Elite Four, have ridiculous teams. And for three, the pacing for this game is atrocious. I mean, it just is. Think about it. You have stretches where you basically have back-to-back-to-back gyms, and you have stretches where there's nothing. Nothing. No gym battles, no battle against Team Galactic, nothing. You're just kind of going along a route for a long time, and then another route for a long time, and it's just like, what's going on? And this also, I think, made it so that they didn't really know how high it should have made the levels of the opposing trainers, because when you get to the league, you are infallibly, unless you've been grinding way too much, really underleveled. Like, ridiculously underleveled. And that is one of the reasons why Cynthia is so difficult. I mean, yeah, her team is really good, but also you're usually taking her on with Pokemon that are like 10 levels lower. Of course you're gonna struggle against her Garchomp. I mean, who isn't? So yes, Sinnoh as a region, great. Diamond and Pearl, still good, but I wouldn't put them towards the top of the list. Next, coming in at number 13, we have Sinnoh again, this time with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which I believe are just slightly better versions of Diamond and Pearl, but the glitches that they had, and also the fact that they refused to change the teams for the gym leaders and Elite Four members, are just enough to kind of drag them back. Now, there's an argument that you could make to have Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl higher up on the list, maybe even as high as 10. But I'm sorry, like, keeping the same teams for the gym leaders and Elite Four is just really stupid. I know they did it with the other remakes, but the Sinnoh gym leaders and Elite Four members from Diamond and Pearl needed different teams. They needed them. I don't care. I don't care if the other remakes didn't do this. They needed to update those teams because they are really, really, really bad. And if anyone's wondering, I don't mean bad as in the Pokemon are weak or they're not a challenge. I mean, sometimes that's the case, but what I'm actually talking about is just they have, like, no Pokemon of that signature type on their team, basically. Like, Flint has 2 fire types as a fire type Elite Four member. What are we talking about? Come on. Anyway, let's move on from Sinnoh for now and go to the last Kanto entry on this list. That being, at number 12, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. So I actually really like these games, and we're starting to get to the part of the list where the ranking is not decided by what these games do wrong, but rather what these games do better than the other ones. And this is kind of the in-between game for that, because I do have some issues with them. Like, I just feel like they could have maybe implemented some new Pokemon in there so that their gym leaders and Elite Fours would have more well-rounded teams. But I do realize that, for one, in Gen 3, a lot of typings still didn't have that much variety. And for two, they were more so trying to do a new spin on Kanto with, like, the Sevi Isles, which I actually think are a great addition. So I don't hate the direction they took the games in, although I do hate that they set the precedent for not changing teams, because, as we've just seen, that can hurt a game a lot. But because of all of this, they are kind of in the middle, right? I do still really like these games, but yeah, I mean, I don't think they're anything above and beyond in terms of Pokemon games, but they're still really good, and definitely the best way to play through Kanto, at least in my opinion. At number 11, and rounding out the bottom half of this list, are 2 games that I would have bet on being in the top 10, but I guess I just missed out, and those games are Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Now, for anyone curious, these are the first Pokemon games that I've ever played. So there's a lot of nostalgia and fond memories attached to these games. However, if I'm trying to be not necessarily objective, because obviously this list is still biased by my own likes and dislikes, but less subjective, let's say, they are really good games, but it just turns out that the games in front of them are even better, if that makes sense. I have nothing really negative to say about these games. I love them. I always will. And I just cannot imagine having started Pokemon with any other set of games. But, yeah, they just kind of come in at number 11, and that's all there is to it. Not really their fault, it's just the games in front of them are that little bit better. Moving to the top half of the list, we have, at number 10, Pokemon Gold and Silver. So these games, I think, are really, really good, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the post-game, which you could almost argue for this game is part of the main story, but I would still say it's post-game, is just fantastic. Like, you go back to Kanto, which, yes, we go to Kanto a lot, but this time it's an appreciated return to Kanto for sure, and you take on all of the gym leaders, but basically in the future compared to the Kanto timeline, and then you can take on Red. I mean, that's amazing. Like, that right there is just worthy of the top 10. Seriously. Add to that the fact that Gen 2 has some of my favorite sprite work, and also a lot of the shinies in Gen 2 were very unique and different than how they are nowadays. In some cases, a lot better than how they are nowadays. Just adds that little bit more flavor to the games that I'm like, yeah, these are really good. Again, we're getting to the point in the list where it's more about what these games do right than what they do wrong. And these games do a lot right. It's just that, again, the games in front of them do even more things better than the other Pokemon games. Let's get to number 9, and this might be a controversial pick. I mean, we've already had a couple, so who really cares about one more, right? And number 9 has Pokemon Sword and Shield. Okay, before everyone attacks me, these games would not have made it into the top 10 without the DLC. No way, no how, just not happening. But, with the DLC, especially Crown Tundra, because Isle of Armor was cool, but nothing special, let's be honest. These games do offer a lot, and I mean a lot. The Dynamax adventures are really fun. All the extra story with the Crown Tundra is really fun. The little bit of extra story with Isle of Armor is cool. I love Urshifu being added into the game, one of my favorite Pokemon. They have some really great regional variants, which is always nice to see. They also just are some of the games I played the most because they're really going to start doing more competitive Pokemon, outside of singles at least. And just in general, they're really cool games. I mean, the fact that they added the wild area is fantastic. And honestly, a lot of the features in Sword and Shield are just at their very best, right? Like, the ability capsules, which now you also have the one for the hidden ability, and you can get Pokemon to perfect IVs easier than ever before. You can even get Pokemon to the maxed out EVs easier than before as well because of all the different protein stuff that are on discount in Isle of Armor. So it's just, in terms of competitive Pokemon, it's basically the best entry to get started with competitive, I'd say. And that alone gives it a lot of bonus points. So that then when you add something like the Wild Area or the Dynamax Adventures or anything like that, I think it does make for an overall really good game that definitely deserves to be in the top 10 discussion, if not just outright top 10 like I have it. Now, the games are not without flaws. That's why it's kind of a contentious spot, I think, because the story is not very good. I'm gonna be honest. Again, it didn't really leave much of an impact on me. It's kind of whatever. I do like some of the characters introduced, but yet again, they are very cookie cutter for the most part. Nothing really groundbreaking. And they're more similar to the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon characters than the Sun and Moon characters, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it does have problems, but I think all of the extra stuff that it implemented and or perfected, earns it a spot in the top 10. Coming in at number 8, we have Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I absolutely adore these games. I mean, I think they're just spectacular, honestly. And we are getting to the point of the list where it's just, I'm going to be praising these games like immensely, basically. So get ready for that. But the one thing I will say is that if it weren't for Pokemon following you, they don't really seem like they're different enough from Gold and Silver for me to be like, oh yes, these are like definitely the best way to go through Johto. In fact, you may have noticed that the last entry for the Johto region is not on the list yet. And that is because that entry is, I think, better than the remakes that we got in Gen 4. Now, I do love the remakes, like I said, but I don't know, it's hard to really explain. I guess the best way to put it is just when the remakes are not the best way to go through that region, it does mean that something could have been done better, and because of that, I think it's fair to put these games at the number 8 spot on this list. Speaking of remakes, we have what I believe to be the last set of them on this list, and that is at number 7, one of the best numbers if I do say so myself, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These games were actually really, really close to being in the top 3. And by really close, I mean that they were missing this one feature. And I'm sure a lot of you already know what I'm gonna say, but I'll give you a couple seconds to guess. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Got it? Doesn't matter, I'm gonna tell you anyway. That feature, of course, is having the Pokemon Emerald Battle Frontier. I mean, seriously, Pokemon, I don't know why you think that remakes have to be so incredibly faithful to the first version of the game of all things and not the third one. But we can move on from that. We really can, you know? I mean, that would have helped Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. That would have helped Heart Gold and Soul Silver. That would have helped these games as well. Because if you're at least basing them off of the third version of the game, the remakes will end up being better just because of that. And I mean, it's just crazy because Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are so fun. And the Delta episode is a very welcome addition. And going through Hoenn again is absolutely fantastic. But I'm still left here wondering why they didn't give us a Battle Frontier. I mean, it would have been just a perfect addition, and these games would skyrocket to top 3. Unfortunately, as they are now, they're stuck at number 7. Still really good, but a missed opportunity. At number 6, and now we're in the big boy games, if you will, we have Pokemon Platinum. And, I mean, this game, I think I could almost just skip over to the next entry, if not for the fact that, if anything, I have to explain why it's not in the top 3. And the reason for that is that it's just an amazing game. I mean, it really is. It takes the Diamond and Pearl games and just improves them in every conceivable way, which is what a third version should do. Sun and Moon and Ultra and Ultra Moon, then yeah, you should have done that too. Doesn't matter. It also has a really good post game. Honestly, almost as good as Emerald. It's hard for me to really say because I do have a bit of bias towards Emerald, as again, Gen 3 was when I started playing. But, I mean, objectively, Pokemon Platinum's post game is amazing. And when you add to that the fact that they, again, just improved everything about Diamond and Pearl, yeah, of course it deserves to be in the, like, top 6 Pokemon games ever. It just makes sense. But why is it not top 3? Well, again, for the most part, it's just that the games in front of it do something, or maybe multiple things, even better than Pokemon Platinum. But that's not really a demerit on Platinum's end. It's just that the other games are even more spectacular. So, understand that I absolutely adore Pokemon Platinum, I just happen to prefer 5 other games before it, if that makes sense. And now, just barely squeaking in the top 5, we have Pokemon Crystal. Yes, Pokemon Crystal, I believe, is easily the best way to go through Johto, because there's something about the way they do the story in Crystal as opposed to Gold and Silver or Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I think improves it overall. It's not very different, obviously, still very much along the same lines of the original story, but the little additions here and there and the little changes, I think, are all for the better. And when you add to that the fact that, again, I love the Gen 2 sprite work, and I think Johto, in terms of just the ambiance, is one of the better Pokemon regions. And again, the post-game is insane because you have a whole other region to explore. I do think that Crystal deserves to be in the top 5, which is honestly really impressive because a Gen 2 game making it in the top 5, that shows just how much of a leap they took in terms of quality of the games from Gen 1 to Gen 2. And now for number 4, and one of my personal favorites. I absolutely adore these games. I've already mentioned them previously in the same video, and those games are Pokemon Sun and Moon. I think the best way for me to explain why these games are so far up the list is that exploring Alola is just fantastic. They combine beautiful landscapes with really intricate cities flawlessly. And then it has that tropical vibe, which is something I really like, especially since living in Sicily, even though it wasn't technically tropical, but it did have some of that same atmosphere / ambiance, if you will. I really identify with these games because that's just where I lived for the first 12 years of my life. And I don't know, there's something so satisfying about just going around Alola. And I love the Pokemon that they introduced for the most part. Like, there's very few misses. There are some, like Bruxish, but not a lot. And then the Pokemon that they get right, I mean, they get them spot on. Mimikyu, Primarina, the Litten line, which somehow pulls off the quadrupedal to bipedal concept. They really nail a lot of these Pokemon. All the Tapus, Lunala, I could just go on and on. There's so many cool Pokemon. And I actually even like the Ultra Beasts. Yes, they look really weird. That's the point. If you just accept they're supposed to look weird and alien-like, you're gonna love them, trust me. They are fantastic, honestly. So, really, these games could have been number 1 on the list if we were talking about a hypothetical third version that improved on everything Sun and Moon had and gave it a post-game on the level of Emerald or Platinum or anything like that. Unfortunately, as we already know by now, we got the exact opposite of that type of third version, so the Alolan games will never crack into the top 3. Which is a shame, because again, these games are so good. And I know a lot of people don't remember Gen 7 that fondly, but just go back and play Sun and Moon. Don't play Ultra and Ultra Moon, just play Sun and Moon. And I'm telling you, they are a lot better than you remember. And honestly, I'm going to make a video on Sun and Moon pretty soon, I think, because I just want to talk about how these are probably the most underrated Pokemon games ever made. And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for. Unless you skip to this part of the video, in which case, hello, how are you doing? Go back to the beginning of the video. Why are you here? No, I'm just kidding. I mean, you can watch this, but then go back to the beginning of the video. Regardless, we have the top 3 Pokemon games of all time. Starting us off at number 3, we have Pokemon Emerald. Now, all of these 3 games are basically interchangeable in my mind, and I had a really tough time organizing this list. I really did. I went back and forth with the top 3 a lot, but I think I've landed on Emerald at number 3 for the simple reason that while I do think the post-game for Emerald is absolutely breathtaking, it is basically just that one area, right? I mean, not completely true, especially if you consider some of the events that happened during Gen 3. But realistically, it is just that one area, right? It's just the Battle Frontier. Fortunately, the Battle Frontier is fantastic, but it's still just the Battle Frontier. And the other 2 games, I mean, they have something that I believe just puts them that little bit above Emerald, just that little bit above. Which is surprising, honestly, because coming into this, I thought Emerald was going to be number 1. But when I really sat down to analyze them, I'm like, I think number 3 feels right. It might still be my all-time favorite game for Pokemon, but a lot of that has to do with nostalgia. And if I'm just trying to really think about how good the games are themselves, I do think number 3 is the right placement for Pokemon Emerald. And now, at number 2, I can finally get the Gen 5 people off my back, because we have Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, which ironically came in at number 2. These games are honestly mind-blowing. How they took Black and White, which, as you've seen, are some of my least favorite Pokemon games out there, and turned them into this? It's just amazing. It's incredible. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I seriously have no idea how they pulled this off. Because these games are so much better than their predecessors. Like, so much better. It is ludicrous. It really is. Like, the post-game, fantastic. The region, it goes from being linear or feeling linear to feeling a lot more diverse and intricate and interesting. The Pokemon that you can find are now no longer almost exclusively the Gen 5 ones. You can get some of the all-time favorites. And you can still get all the Gen 5 ones. And all the characters that they introduced that are not in Black and White are interesting characters. And you have a much more logical storyline, because Team Plasma is now confirmed to have been made up of people who are super naive, and then people who are, again, that word that starts with A and ends with Ho. Like, they improved on everything. They just did. It's insane. They literally made everything better. They took Black and White and they're like, yeah, these games could have been a lot better. Let's do that. And they did it. It is ridiculous. Like, yes, the starters are still the starters, but they're not enough to knock this down from number 2. Come on. I mean, this game is just stupendous. It really is. And the post-game is my favorite post-game of any Pokemon game to date. It is that good. Like, it really is. The Black Tower or the White Tree Hollow, and then you can go to the reserve and you can get a shiny Haxorus. What? What? A shiny Haxorus? I mean, are you kidding me? Yes, please. That is awesome. Like, seriously, it's fantastic. And again, even in the White Tree Hollow or Black Tower, you can get shiny pseudo-legendaries for beating them. And there's the Pokemon World Tournament. That's not even it. There's the Pokemon World Tournament. There's the Battle Subway. Like, they really have everything. Again, these games are just top-notch, stupendous, magnificent, a masterpiece. Masterpiece, not masterpiece. That sounds wrong. Don't repeat that. Masterpiece. Seriously, like, I absolutely adore these games, and I mean, yeah, they deserve to be here for sure. And again, they honestly had a pretty good shot at being number 1. But at number 1, and I think there really can only be one game for this entry on the list, and that game, of course, is Pokemon Legends Arceus. This right here is what peak performance looks like. And I would make the joke of you may not like it, but we all love this game. And there's a reason why, because this is what a Pokemon game is supposed to be like. This. You explore the region, you can catch Pokemon with different sneaking up methods, and you can throw a Pokeball from behind them. Since they don't see it, it's more likely to catch them. And you can battle trainers, but also they're still learning how to do it. But they're also like competing with you. Even when you beat them, they're all competing with you. It's not just one rival, it's everyone. But they also all respect you, which is great. I mean, Commander Kanto does have that one moment where he loses his mind, but he does it in good faith, so it's okay. I mean, this game, it's just incredible. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. The fact that they took such a new concept and made it so polished, and it's so well executed, and it's so fun to play. Like, seriously, who doesn't love this game? Is there anyone who doesn't love this game? Because it is that good. It really is that incredibly good. I could go on and on forever about all of the different things that make it amazing. Like the game actually being difficult in places, which is great to see. Overworld shinies, yes, please. Catching Pokemon in the overworld, yes, please. Having the rapid style and strong style for some different ways of battling, again, yes, please. But all you need to know is that a game that can keep your attention for 100 hours just to finish the story realistically is an absolutely fantastic game. And that is all you can say about Legends Arceus, because there are just not enough superlatives to describe this beauty of a Pokemon game. And we did it. We went through all of the Pokemon games. This was a lot of fun for me to do. It was also a lot to organize, but I had a great time doing it. I hope you had a great time watching it. And if you want to see more Pokemon content, especially for Scarlet and Violet as they keep getting closer and closer, but also in general, like this type of content, I do recommend subscribing. And also, I said that I had 1 or 2 100 sub specials planned, but there's actually a third one that's kind of a secret. And that's going to be coming out on August 22nd or beyond. And if you're wondering why, well then again, I recommend subscribing and finding out, because that video I think is going to be really fun. But I really cannot make it until that day. Trust me. But again, if you want to see that, you know what to do. Regardless, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you all in the next video. But until then, remember to follow the way of the ace. See ya!